Welcome to the travel podcast by ExcursionPass. We are so glad you're joining us today. So I want you to think about this for a second. If you only have one day, literally just one single day, to soak in the absolute pinnacle of French history, what do you choose?
Oh, that is quite the question.
Right. I mean, do you go for the quiet, intensely observed intimacy of the birthplace of Impressionism, surrounded by those meticulously cultivated water lilies and weeping willows?
Right, Claude Monet's Sanctuary.
Exactly. Or do you choose the complete opposite, the sprawling, gold-plated, almost incomprehensible opulence of the French royal court?
Well, I mean, that's basically the ultimate traveler's dilemma, isn't it? You are essentially forced to choose between the serene, hyper-focused mind of an artist and the massive, unyielding ego of a king.
Yeah, and for anyone looking at a map of France, those two locations, Giverny and Versailles, they feel like they demand entirely different mindsets, not to mention they aren't exactly next door to each other.
No, not at all.
But today's deep dive into our stack of sources is focused on a highly ambitious undertaking, which is doing both.
In one day.
In 9 hours, actually. We are analyzing an ExcursionPass listing, some really extensive TripAdvisor reviews, and direct operator responses for the Giverny and Versailles small group day trip from Paris, operated by a company called Normandy Melody.
And, our mission today is to figure out if cramming Monet's delicate gardens and Louis XIV's massive palace into a single time block is a masterclass in modern logistical efficiency.
Or if it's just a high-priced fast track to physical and emotional exhaustion.
Exactly.
Now, I know what your objections are right now as you're listening. I can basically hear you thinking, wait, both? In 9 hours, my feet hurt just hearing that.
Oh, absolutely.
And honestly, same. But we are your resident travel experts.
And
we've combed through the details so vividly, it's going to feel like you're literally walking the cobblestones alongside us. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, the central tension here is time scarcity versus historical scale. Most people visiting Paris are operating on a severe time deficit.
Yeah, they have, maybe 4 or 5 days to consume 1,000 years of culture?
Right, and if you attempt to visit Giverny and Normandy and the Palace of Versailles on your own, using public transit in a single day, the mathematics simply do not work.
Because of the trains.
Yeah, navigating the separate train lines, managing the transfers, and then standing in the inevitable hours-long admission lines at both sites. It makes it physically impossible.
So the tour operator kind of steps in as a temporal engineer.
That's a great way to put it.
But before we look at how actual humans handled this gauntlet in the reviews, let's look at the blueprint they've designed. The day departs sharply at 8 a.m. from a specific meeting point.
Which is 69 Avenue Marceau, right?
Yes, right in front of a bakery near the Champs-Élysées.
Starting in front of a Parisian bakery is a really smart psychological anchor. It sets this distinctly local, pleasant tone before the grueling pace actually begins.
Grab a croissant before the marathon.
Exactly. But the crucial structural element of this specific tour isn't the meeting point. It's the group size. The maximum capacity is capped at 8 travelers.
8?
Yeah, just 8. Transported in an air-conditioned minibus with a price tag hovering around 250 euros per adult.
Which raises an immediate question for me about the mechanics of group travel. Why 8? Because when you see tours of Versailles, you usually picture a massive double-decker bus disgorging like 50 people.
Yeah, and then they all have to shuffle behind a guide holding a brightly colored umbrella.
Yes. The neon yellow umbrella of doom.
Right, but 8 is the magic number for bypassing a significant amount of friction in European travel.
How so?
Well, from a purely logistical standpoint, an 8-passenger van can navigate narrower streets. It completely bypasses the severe parking and routing restrictions that govern large commercial tour buses in Paris.
Oh, that makes sense.
But more importantly, it alters the psychology of the group. With 50 people, you suffer from herd mentality delays.
Someone is always in the bathroom.
Always. Or someone is always taking a photo, or someone is lagging behind. Every single transition takes 20 minutes.
So an 8-person group strips out the transitional drag. You're effectively creating a nimble strike force of tourists.
A cultural strike force, yes.
And the itinerary they are striking is dense. I mean, listen to this. A guided visit to Monet's home, his flower gardens, and the famous water gardens.
And then a drive to Versailles.
Right, to hit the royal apartments, the Hall of Mirrors, and the formal French gardens. And the operator leans heavily on the phrase, skip the line access, to sell the feasibility of this whole day.
What's fascinating here is that skip the line is the operational linchpin. It is literally the only way a schedule this dense avoids immediate collapse.
Because without it, you're just standing in a parking lot for 3 hours.
Exactly. But getting that access requires securing highly specific timed entry slots for a group, which requires a level of institutional access the average solo traveler just doesn't possess.
I look at this schedule, though, and I keep coming back to a technological analogy.
Oh, like what?
Well, trying to process the nuance of Impressionism and the sheer scale of the Bourbon dynasty in a 9-hour window feels a lot like lossy audio compression.
Like converting a massive, high-fidelity file into an MP3.
Exactly that. To get an audio file to fit on your phone, the algorithm strips out the frequencies that the human ear barely registers.
Right.
You lose the silence, you lose the deepest resonance, and you just get a compressed file that gives you the recognizable melody.
That is a highly accurate way to frame it.
This itinerary is lossy compression for travel. You're stripping out the wandering, the accidental discoveries, and the quiet moments of contemplation, just to ensure the major historical beats fit into a single day.
You are definitely trading depth for breadth.
Yeah.
But, to keep that compressed file from corrupting, to keep the day from devolving into a chaotic rush, the sources point to one undeniably critical factor.
The guides.
Yes. When you read the reviews, the praise isn't centered on the comfort of the van or even the efficiency of the tickets. It is intensely laser-focused on the human beings operating the door.
The guides are treated like absolute lifesavers in these TripAdvisor reviews. Names like Antoine, Lucy, Valeria, Sarah, and Claude are cited repeatedly.
And not just as drivers, but as deeply knowledgeable historians.
Yeah. And there's one name that dominates the feedback, which is a guide named Jean-Paul, or JP.
The portrait the reviewers paint of JP is so instructive because it highlights the fragile margin of error in a compressed itinerary.
Because a 9-hour sprint has zero slack.
Zero.
Right.
If one variable goes wrong, the entire schedule shatters.
Which brings us to a review from a user named DonH999. They describe this morning commute out of Paris where their van approached a massive traffic pileup stretching for miles.
And in France, that usually means one thing.
A strike.
Yeah.
In this case, striking cab drivers were actively blocking the major arterial roads. And anyone who has driven in Europe knows that a transit strike is a force majeure. It can obliterate a carefully planned day.
You really can.
But DonH999 notes that JP, utilizing his local knowledge, seamlessly navigated the labyrinth of side streets, entirely avoiding the gridlock.
That is where the local expertise transcends trivia and becomes operational security. JP actually grew up in Versailles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the value he provides in that moment isn't his knowledge of the French Revolution. It's his mental map of the suburban Parisian road network.
And it seems that safety net extends to the corporate level of the operator as well, not just the guides on the ground.
What do you mean?
Well, reviewer John K. left this fascinating piece of feedback where he publicly admitted to making a massive logistical error. He booked the wrong date for his trip.
Oh no, a situation that usually results in the total loss of a non-refundable €250 ticket.
Right, I'd be sweating. But John K. states that Normandy Melody reacted instantly. They rescheduled him for the correct date and rectified the fee variances without forcing him through a labyrinth of customer service bureaucracy.
That's incredibly rare.
He explicitly noted that this level of intervention was all 5 stars on its own.
Which really reframes what the traveler is actually purchasing here. You aren't just buying a ride to a museum.
No, you're buying insurance, basically.
You're purchasing a risk mitigation strategy. You are buying the peace of mind that if a strike paralyzes the city, or if you make a silly booking error, an expert is there to absorb the friction.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The guide's role clearly goes beyond playing traffic cop and customer service rep.
Right. They're also educators.
Yeah, the reviews rave about how they blend art, history, and culture into the drive, which makes me wonder about the cognitive function of the guide.
What do you mean by cognitive function?
Like, does hearing a local expert talk about the historical context actually change the way your brain processes the physical space once you arrive?
Oh, it changes it entirely. Primarily by combating a phenomenon known as museum fatigue.
Oh, that feeling where after 2 hours in the Louvre, every masterpiece just looks like a blurry square on the wall?
Precisely. Museum fatigue is a documented neurological reality. When you walk into a place like the Palace of Versailles, your visual cortex is instantly overwhelmed.
I can imagine.
The sheer density of gold leaf, the intricate frescoes on the ceilings, the endless geometry of the gardens, it requires a massive amount of cognitive energy to process.
So your brain just gets tired.
Yes. Without context, your brain quickly becomes saturated, and it essentially shuts down to protect itself from sensory overload. The art just becomes wallpaper.
So I imagine the guide acts as a sort of, cognitive buffer. Instead of your brain trying to process the raw, overwhelming visual data of 1,000 painted cherubs, the guide gives you a narrative.
They provide the missing metadata.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, the sources mentioned that on some of the operators' extended tours, guides take clients to Versailles to discuss Vincent van Gogh's final despairing days.
Wow.
And at Giverny, they don't just point to a flower. They explain the intense why behind Monet's obsession.
Right.
They might explain how Monet diverted a local river to create his water garden, or how his failing eyesight later in life forced a shift in his color palette.
That makes perfect sense. If I'm looking at a blurry painting of a water lily and I'm just trying to appreciate the aesthetics, my brain might check out.
Exactly.
But if the guide has anchored that painting to the narrative of an aging artist battling cataracts while trying to capture the ephemeral nature of light on water,
It changes everything.
suddenly the visual input is sticky. My brain is processing a human struggle, not just a canvas. The narrative gives the visual data somewhere to live in my memory.
And by shifting the cognitive load from visual processing to narrative processing, the guide keeps the traveler mentally engaged. The storytelling acts as a distraction from the intense constraints of the schedule.
But, even the most brilliant narrative processing can't overcome basic human biology.
No, it cannot.
The guide can distract your mind, but they cannot distract your feet. Which brings us to the brutal physical reality of this day trip.
This is where the romantic illusion of skipping the line crashes headfirst into the unyielding architecture of the 17th century.
Yes. Let's look at the quantitative data from the sources. Reviewer Solo Traveler Georgia provided a vital metric. They literally tracked their movement during this curated VIP van tour.
And what was the final tally?
16,000 steps.
Wow, that translates to roughly 7 miles of walking.
7 miles, and we need to be incredibly clear about the terrain here.
It's not a treadmill.
No. 7 miles on a modern rubberized track is a solid workout. 7 miles navigating uneven, centuries-old cobblestones, shifting gravel pathways, and the massive, unyielding stone expanses of royal courtyards. That is physically punishing.
Solo Traveler George's review is illuminating because it separates the quality of the service from the physical toll.
Right, they still praise the tour itself.
Exactly. They praised their guides, Antoine and Lucy, calling them excellent. But they noted that by the time the group finished Versailles and boarded the van to return to Paris, the collective exhaustion was palpable.
Just a van full of silent, tired people.
Pretty much. The reviewer explicitly stated that the enjoyment factor had plummeted by the end of the day, leading them to advise future travelers to split Giverny and Versailles into 2 separate days.
Which fundamentally contradicts the entire value proposition of the tour. The operator is selling the ability to do it in one day.
Right.
But if the reality of doing it in one day means the final 2 hours are spent silently enduring foot pain and begging for the hotel bed, the efficiency becomes kind of self-defeating.
To understand why this physical friction occurs, we really have to look at the architectural intent of Versailles.
What do you mean?
Well, Louis XIV did not build a cozy residence. He built a 2,300-room palace set on 800 hectares of land.
That is massive.
The scale was not an accident. It was a weapon.
Yeah, weapon.
Yes. The architecture was specifically designed to dwarf humanity, to make foreign dignitaries and rival nobles feel small, exhausted, and overwhelmed by the absolute power of the French crown.
Oh, wow.
The palace is an instrument of political subjugation through scale.
That is a brilliant point. The very floor plan of Versailles is designed to slow you down and make you feel insignificant.
Exactly.
And modern tourism is attempting to take this massive 800-hectare psychological weapon and hack it into a neat 3-hour itinerary block.
The friction between the ancient, unhackable scale of the site and the modern desire for a curated, time-saving sprint is immense. You can buy a skip-the-line ticket, but you cannot buy a shorter hallway.
And that friction leads directly to the mental rush, which produces perhaps the most surprising piece of feedback in our entire stack of sources.
Ooh, the Hall of Mirrors review.
Yes. Reviewer, JBD 1840, felt the 8 to 9 hour time frame simply wasn't enough. They noted a slight delay getting tickets, which happens even with skip-the-line access, and because of that, they felt incredibly rushed.
And what was their reaction?
As a result of that rush, they described the Hall of Mirrors as meh.
The Hall of Mirrors.
Yes.
Arguably one of the most historically dense and visually staggering rooms on the European continent.
The room designed to reflect the absolute pinnacle of royal excess. The very room where the Treaty of Versailles was signed to end World War I, and this traveler's emotional reaction to it was meh.
That's heartbreaking, honestly.
They explicitly wrote they would have preferred spending less time looking at paintings of kings and more time exploring the massive Queen's Garden outside.
Well, what JBD 1840 is articulating is the cognitive load of the ticking clock.
Explain that.
If you walk into a masterpiece of human engineering, but your brain is actively calculating that you only have 14 minutes to get back to the designated meeting point at the minibus.
Your mind physically cannot process awe.
Exactly. The anxiety of the schedule completely overrides the aesthetic experience.
So what does this all mean? The efficiency actively destroyed the wonder. You pay €250 to ensure you get to the room, but the mechanics of getting you there almost guarantee you won't actually feel anything once you arrive.
The operator, Melody, actually stepped in to respond to this specific critique, and her public response serves as a necessary reality check for the modern traveler.
What did she say?
She didn't argue with the reviewer's feeling of being rushed. Instead, she leaned into the structural reality. She reiterated the staggering statistic, 2,300 rooms, 800 hectares.
All right.
She openly admitted that it is completely impossible to see everything in half a day.
She basically conceded that the lossy compression is the only way the product functions.
Precisely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, she noted that they purposefully curate the visit to hit the absolute highlights, the King's and Queen's apartments, the Hall of Mirrors, and a specific viewing angle of the gardens.
It's a tasting menu, not an all-you-can-eat buffet.
That's it. But she established a firm boundary. If a traveler's goal is exhaustive exploration, like walking all the way out to Marie Antoinette's estate at the Trianon's domain, they must book a dedicated full-day excursion solely for Versailles.
This highlights a really profound responsibility on the part of the traveler, I think.
Oh, definitely.
Because the tour operator can manage the logistics, the guide can manage the narrative, but the traveler has to manage their own psychology. If you are a completionist, someone who needs to read every single historical placard, or who wants to sit on a bench in the gardens for an hour just to watch the clouds move over the fountains, this 9-hour combo tour is going to cause you immense frustration.
It is entirely about expectation alignment. The reviewers who award this tour 5 stars, which we should note is the vast majority of them, are the ones who accept the lossy compression.
They accept the MP3 version of the day.
Right. They surrender their need for exhaustive control and lean entirely into the expertise of guides like JP. They allow the curated storytelling to replace their own wandering.
So as we synthesize all of this for you, the listener, who is maybe currently looking at your calendar and trying to engineer your own Parisian itinerary, the takeaways are remarkably clear.
Very clear.
If you book this ExcursionPass and Normandy Melody day trip, you are buying a logistical masterpiece. You are buying JP navigating around a taxi strike. But you must prepare for the reality of the ground.
Which means you need exceptional, well-broken-in footwear.
Please, no new shoes.
Definitely not. You must mentally prepare for a 7-mile march across 17th century cobblestones.
And you have to actively use your guide to offset the fatigue. Ask them questions, let them build the narrative architecture in your mind so that when you hit that 7th mile, the history still feels alive rather than just heavy.
It requires serious stamina.
It really does. But if you accept the constraints, it delivers exactly what it promises on paper.
But, I think it leaves us with a lingering philosophical question about the nature of modern travel itself.
Oh.
We have engineered these incredible systems, VIP passes, skip-the-line algorithms, curated 9-hour sprints, all designed to help us consume culture faster.
Right, efficiently.
But at a certain velocity, are we actually experiencing a place, or are we just collecting photographic proof that we occupied its space for a fleeting moment?
Oh, wow.
Consider Claude Monet. He did not merely glance at his water garden. He spent decades studying a single pond, obsessing over the minute, hourly shifts in light, shadow, and reflection to truly understand its depth.
Decades versus hours.
Exactly. If it took the artist a lifetime of stillness to comprehend the beauty he was creating, what exactly are we missing when we only give it 45 minutes before running back to the van?